I would like to know why the Supreme Court does not make its arguments available to the public through televised arguments.
You mean the oral argument?
Oral arguments.
They are available. It's just a question of when they're available. Why don't we have television in the courtroom?
Well, we do have television in a lot of courtrooms. But
oh, yeah, you do.
not
I
in the
mean,
Supreme Court.
so why do we not have television in the Supreme Court to have the oral argument? Well, because people, I guess, and most people there think the negatives outweigh the positives at this moment. The positives are obvious positives. The positive would be, it'd be quite educational for people to see. And I think what they discover are 9 people who do their job in an institution that works pretty well. And they'd see that some of these issues that they think are so obvious one way or the other are far from obvious. And I'd like to think in that respect a very minor issue, but it turned out to be important, about the term limits issue, whether that violated the Constitution. My goodness, that was an interesting argument. Because for every argument you had on one side, you had one on the other. Jefferson thought one thing in Story, Madison and Hamilton the other. So there'd be a tremendous educational value. You say, well, why not do it? Well, there are arguments on the other side, and I can tell you what they are. I'm not necessarily endorsing one or the other. The arguments on the other side in the Supreme Court are, one, people would worry because of the symbolic value of the court, that the television would then be in every courtroom in the country, including all the criminal cases where you have concerns about witnesses and jurors and intimidation and so forth. The second argument that people sometimes make is that it wouldn't be understood very well that this oral argument's only 5% of what goes on. Most of it's in briefs. And the third, which is, and people relate to human beings, you know, and what our job requires is not to focus on those particular individuals in the cases. And that's probably the most important thing. The nature of our job is to worry about the 300 million people who will have to live under this rule of law, interpreted one way or the other. And those people are not in that courtroom. Rather, there are 2 lawyers and there's a plaintiff and a defendant. And people might, being people, as very nice quality about human beings, they focus on individuals. You meet somebody, you relate. You see him in a picture, you relate a little less. You see him and hear about him in a radio, still a little less. You still, news stories, still less. He's a statistic, you hardly can keep your eyes open. That is a characteristic of human beings. So there are concerns there. Now, which way those concerns balance out, I don't know. It hasn't really come up very much. People have different views on that, and I'm not going to express my own view one way or the other on this. But we're moving in a direction where more and more is on television, and maybe people adapt to it more and more. But at the moment, that's all I can say about it.
Any further words?
I obviously haven't convinced you, but I'm just trying to acquaint you with the arguments on the 2 sides. Well, oh, I forgot one, which is important, psychologically. It's not a logical argument, but it is important psychologically. Every one of us, while you're there, while I'm there, not one of us thinks that we're doing at any minute what 99% of the people think we're doing, which is doing what we want. I think almost all the time I'm not. We're trustees. That's what we think of. We are trustees of an institution. And that institution has served America well in the past, okay, we hope, in the present, and who knows about the future. And so some of us may think, if we were to vote for something with the implications of change we know not what, be careful. That's called being very conservative about working major changes on this institution. That's not a logical argument. It's a psychological argument. But I wouldn't understate its importance.
The architect of the Supreme Court was a talented man named Cass Gilbert. One of the features he put in the courtyards to hold the beautiful lamps up, were tortoises. Now, why did he do that? It's because justice moves slowly. And why does justice move slowly? It's because it's better to be sure than sorry. Okay?
I think I speak for all of us.